Welcome. This is Introduction to Design Thinking. I am Danielle Lake. I am the Director of Design Thinking here at Elon and a professor. My background is in sort of publicly engaged philosophy. And I run the center, which is above Pandora's Pies. If you've never been there, we're connected to the Maker Hub. In fact, I just got here in August and I thought those back doors in our center were a closet. It's actually the Maker Hub. So they're around the corner to the back of the hallway. And before you get to them, we have us. But I wanted to ask you, if we were in person, what we are. What is the Center for Design Thinking? What do we do? Why would you come? We're probably not as intuitive as the Maker Hub or the Writing Center, right? You go to the Maker Hub to make stuff. What do you come to the Center for Design Thinking for? What is design thinking? What are these people doing, right? If you think of the Maker Hub as a space for creating physical objects, projects that you want to see out into the world, the Center Design thinking is more holistically about creating the life or the projects or the visions or the kind of collaborative teamwork, class experiences, semesters that you want in your life. It's the internal processes, methods, and tools, and some of the physical ones, but not like the big machines, right? That prepare you for the kind of work you want to do, that make sure that when you invest all of your resources and time into something, it's worth doing. It's going to bring you joy. It's going to be innovative. It's going to be creative. It's a process for moving towards the goals you want. So here you can see some faculty getting involved and some students. We describe design thinking in the center as a process, a method, and over time, a mindset. So it's a process for finding problems worth solving and creating innovative, but also viable responses in response to the situation or the problem, right? And we provide methods for doing that. Studies show we're not actually that creative as humans. We're not, we have anywhere between 30 and 70,000 thoughts in a day. 90 to 95% of those thoughts are repeated every single day. We have habits, not just physical habits, but mental habits. We have a lot of unconscious drivers that influence what we think and feel and what we do. And these methods within design thinking are processes for breaking into those habits so that we can live into the life we want or cultivate the solutions that are really going to yield outcomes or change things we don't like. And over time, what we hope then is you develop a new set of habits or mindsets for living into what you want to do. So we talk about this as a discipline because it's actually a lot of hard work of finding problems that are really worth solving in your life. Again, we often get the problem wrong. As humans, we'd rather not have a problem. We'd rather deny that there's any problems, blame other people for it, make excuses. You don't let me do any of that. I might start to freak out. It's only after I get past all of those emotions and responses that I might start to hold myself accountable and say, okay, crap, what am I going to do about this? What can I do? What could I do? How could I solve it? How could I fix it? Notice that requires a lot of energy, a lot less energy to just deny there's anything wrong or to blame other people for it. So nice, it's convenient. And this is about finding problems that are really worth solving. So again, not leaping over the problem, like, the problem with my unhappiness is I just need to lose weight. I just need to eat healthier. Maybe the problem is something else. We want to dig into better understanding what the problem is so that we can create a solution. We can invest our energy and our resources into a response that's actually going to get at the root of what's gone wrong. But design thinking is not just about finding out what's really wrong. It's also about creating viable responses to the situation. So again, as humans, we can do a lot of work critiquing and complaining, maybe not a lot of work innovating, responding, or really trying to solve the problem. This is about not just the front half of figuring out what's gone wrong, but that back half of wrestling with fixing it. Really digging in and getting innovative and not just repeating everyone else has already done, or replicating or copying. We're really trying to find something that works for us, for this situation, for this moment, a viable, innovative, creative response. At Elon, we have our own unique model of design thinking. You're going to find this process almost everywhere. Governments, some government agencies are using this now. A lot of big businesses are using this. Google, Stanford, Steelcase, Herman Miller, a lot of global companies, a lot of nonprofits, and actually a lot of higher education institutions and K through 12s. Most of these processes begin with something like the word empathy. And they begin with that word because we need to better understand the perspective of other people. We have a lot of our own assumptions and blind spots and triggers and all of that kind of stuff that blinds us to what other people are going through. And then we make assumptions about what they're going through and we get it entirely wrong. So they ask you to empathize, to observe, to get more curious, more humble, and listen and take in and try to understand what other people are going through. And we value that here at Elon. But before we get you there, we ask you to frame. And the word frame here is about becoming consciously aware, really honestly empathizing with yourself. How do you see the problem? What are you going through? Why do you see it that way? Until I become aware of my own frame, it can be really hard for me to see the perspective of others. Or I can make a lot of assumptions. I can place my frame onto others. And so framing, figuring out what the problem means to you and why, what's motivating or triggering you to care or not care, can help you understand the approach you're taking when you go to listen to another person, when you're observing somebody else or something else, right? So let's all at least try a little bit harder to become aware of how we see the problem and why we see it that way. Our perspective is valuable. It always is, right? What we bring, what we see, what we've lived, but it's also always fallible. We're at best partially wrong. We're limited. I have a very narrow lens from which I've experienced the world. Just this body, right? Just this perspective. And I need to be aware of that and then explore, seek out the perspective of others. Listen, gather evidence, observe more critically and creatively, and pool all of that together so that I can better understand the whole complexities of what's going on in this situation, both within me and outside of me. And once I understand, once I frame and explore the problem more holistically and I've got a better vision, then I want to start generating, third stage, opportunities for what we could do about this. What could we do? Not just the obvious thing we could do, but what's a radical thing we could do? What's a really low stakes, bare bones thing we could do today? What could I do? What's a crazy, wild thing I could do or an expensive thing, right? Generating is about going beyond the obvious and getting lots and lots of ideas about how to move forward. And this is really valuable as well because, again, we tend to leap over that part. We want to solve the problem. We want to get over it. We don't want to have it. And so sometimes we put a lot of energy into something that's not really going to work. It's not going to work that well. So generating is about dreaming big and holding space for lots and lots of good ideas instead of critiquing them right as they come out of our mouth or out of somebody else's mouth. Prototyping, step 4, also incredibly valuable. This is about learning by doing. And that is so important because that's honestly how humans learn. We're embodied creatures in this world. We learn by making, by doing, by instantiating. Just dreaming something up in our head and imagining how it will go, that's not quite going to do it for us. Studies show we're not that good at predicting our own response to future possible crises. Over and over again, studies are showing this, right? We're going to figure out better, what our response might be when we role play it, when we sketch it out, when we talk with others about it, when we somehow learn by making, when we lower the stakes and dabble to see if that's right for us. By doing that, we expose our assumptions and we resist pouring all of our resources into something before we know if it's going to work for us. So learn by doing. Once you've done something, start cultivating solutions that work for you and dropping the ones that don't. Revise, recommit, redo. So if you look at the black squiggly line moving throughout this visual, that's what the process really feels like. It's not really just 5 stages and we kind of wander on through and come out with some innovative, beautiful life or project or team, but really it's the hard slog, again, we said the discipline of moving into some of these processes or others. To be honest, I think the human brain generates solutions right away because it doesn't want to have a problem. So often we hear a problem, and if you don't let me deny it, I might jump right into generating your solution. Like, here you go. You haven't even finished telling me what your problem is, and I've got an answer for you, right? I leap. So I'm in the generate stage. All right, so I just become aware of that. Let me step back and explore. Let me listen more fully to what the person is saying. Let me pause, breathe. And then let me step back and frame. Okay, how do I see this? How do I see it though? All right, what can we do about it? And then I'm going to leap into prototype. All right, how did that prototype go? Let me go back to framing and exploring and generating. And right, that black squiggly line is what it really feels like to live into this process. That's how we cultivate a life we value. And that's far better than figuring out at the end of life when it's over that we didn't live the one we digging in. Right. So that's our process at Elon. But why are you here? Why are you listening to this? How does this relate to a class? Well, this is a process you can use in classrooms to do real world projects. projects that meet the learning goals, get your assignments done, or get you that A, that also move you forward towards the goals that you value or yield value in your community or in your personal life, in your civic life, in your professional life. So I've used this process in a lot of courses of my own. One course was on food issues, food access, food security, food justice. We were going to address food issues on our own college campus. I just moved to Elon, so my prior college was a very large public university that had a lot of students who were working full time, who were food insecure, who didn't have resources available to them. And we knew this based on the data. We also had a food pantry, and yet nobody went to the food pantry. It was empty. There was a lot of food, but no people, no students. And we said, okay, what could we do about this? And my students said, week one, well, the problem, stigma, students are afraid of being judged and they're not going to go. So that was our assumption, right? That was our framing. The second stage of this process is to verify that. Is that true? Is that why no one's going? You get out there, boots on the ground, you start walking around, talking to faculty, staff, students, everybody about Grand Valley, about what they know. What we found out was nobody even knew we had a food pantry. It was in the basement of one of our buildings in like a back closet corner. So while stigma could be a problem, it's not a problem yet because nobody even knows this is a resource for them. Right? Exploring the critical stage we cannot pass because it often blows up our assumptions. What are we going to do about it? This is the stage where you don't resist dreaming big, where you don't just rip all of your ideas to shreds or your partner's ideas or your team's ideas, you dream big. So we went from ideas from like needing a food truck, because honestly, Grand Valley has 5 total campuses, not just one. So how does a basement pantry serve our students? Right? We went from having a food truck and refrigeration and all these other great models for like nonprofit work around food justice towards let's make some phone calls and start changing the way we operate when we bring students onto campus and we orient them to campus, or how we train first years, how we expose them, right? You generate tens, 50, hundreds of possibilities of what you could do about a problem instead of just one. And then you start playing with them, combining them, weighing them. Well, what could be the impact of this solution versus that one? What's the effort involved, right? And you start making decisions and you start prototyping. Start talking to people about how you might get a food truck. What would it require? What are the legal liabilities? What are the roadblocks? How could we do this differently? How could we make it lower stakes? You start doing stuff and you learn by doing. And again, that black squiggly line, you keep moving forward till you cultivate solutions that work for you. So in that first semester, we cultivated the relationships that transform the way we orient first year students to Grand Valley. And in that next academic year, access to that food pantry exploded. The effort involved in making a few phone calls and having a few meetings and changing the awareness of that resource was worth the impact, knowing that students were then able to access what they needed if they ran out of supplies. The effort involved in getting food trucks on campus with the liability and all the other stuff, right? That's an activist campaign that's going to take years, but it's something that we can still work towards, right? How can we cultivate solutions? What can we do under the constraints of here and now? What I love about this process is this idea of really sparking what I'm going to call radical imaginaries. Stop thinking in the box. We have the systems we do, the crises we do, because we're constraining ourselves to the realities that we've constructed, to the designs we've put in place. We could live differently. We could be different people. Radical imaginaries. Think outside of this. This world, in many ways, is not working for many people. But it's not just about thinking radically differently. It's about doing something. That is the practical, relational, meliorist, iterative process of doing something small, pressing and pressing and pressing for that change till you cultivate the radical new way of being. And over time, it might be possible. Changes do happen. But all of that aside, what are we going to have you do here? We're going to have you think about how you could use this process to imagine your next 4 months. What might your summer look like? Given everything that's gone on and that is going on, how might you live into your best summer yet? How might you harness your life, your relationships, and the opportunities that are still around you and the constraints that have been placed upon you to live into who you want to be and what you want to do? We're going to go through a sprint, a very fast, like 30-minute sprint, using these tools, just a couple of them, to imagine how to live your life over the next 4 months. This seems very timely. We were going to have you do this with a partner. We wanted you to partner up with another student in your class and actually design with and for them as a way of practicing empathy and framing and listening and design, and how hard that is when you're really trying to intuit what somebody else needs and wants. So if you can partner up and break out into your own rooms, call each other on the phone or Skype or whatever it is you want to do. What we want you to do is think back to your last summers. What worked for you? What didn't work? What did you love? What did you hate? What did you do? What did you learn? How would you make it different this time around? And just dig in and ask each other questions. Interview one another. Explore. Take as many notes as possible. You want to download the PDF that we've attached to this video? And in the first open page on the left-hand box, fill in, ask your partner everything they can tell you about what they loved about their past summers. Take as many notes as possible, ask them as many questions as possible, and time yourselves. Give yourselves 5 minutes. And then they get 5 minutes to interview you and to jot down as many of their notes as possible. Once those 10 minutes are done, pause this video and then return to it. And you're going to dig into the top right-hand box. I want you to ask yourselves why. I want you to look at the first set of notes that you came up with and ask some follow-up questions. What we design often doesn't serve other people's needs. There's a lot of unintended and unfortunate consequences to our designs in this world because we didn't really understand what the person needed or wanted. This is your opportunity to look at those notes and think about what you didn't ask and what you still might not know and to follow up. Here I'd say, again, give yourself 3 to 5 minutes to interview each other, no more than 10 each, and take as many additional notes as you possibly can. You're going to need these to design innovations that actually work for your partner. The final step here, that bottom rectangle, you want to think about what was implied by all of what was said. Right? For humans, there's almost always a gap between what we say and what we do. There's a gap between what we think and what we feel. And there's a gap between what we're allowing ourselves to consciously know and what's happening underneath the surface. And that's true within all of us. So as a partner listening to somebody else, you're trying to dig in underneath that surface. When I went through this workshop myself about 8 months ago, it took me to that bottom rectangle to really uncover what was left unsaid. And the person that I was interviewing was going through some transitions in life, and underneath all of that was loneliness. And if I didn't design innovations to foster new relationships and connections, nothing I designed was going to work. Right? But that person wasn't going to say and did not say, I'm sad and lonely, or I'm going through relational transitions, or anything like that. And I would have never thought of that if I wouldn't have just paused for those last 2 to 3 minutes and reflected on everything I heard and did not hear. But what's behind what's being said? There's often so much behind it. So give yourselves those last couple minutes, maybe 2.5, 3 each, to jot down some other insights you're coming to. You're going to need the best notes possible here in order to move to the next page. And the next page is about generating. What could we do, given everything we now know about each other? What could we do? So turn to the next page in your toolkit, and here what I want you to think about is what functional, social, and emotional tasks or jobs this person wants to get done in their summer, in their next 4 to 5 months. What is it they really want to do? And functional here means like physically, what do they want to do? What do they want to get done? So for me, I have an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old. I honestly always want my summers to ensure that my kids don't kind of fall into that brain drain. How can I secretly create these educational but fun experiences that hold on to what they've learned so that we're not stepping 3 or 4 steps back as we move into the next grade? But I want it to happen in such a way that they're having fun and that they don't dislike us as parents because of these opportunities. So the functional things I want to get done are deeply tied to the social and emotional things I want to do. I want my kids to love me. I want to have a great family experience, right? Now, again, often when we design innovations for people, we're not thinking about the social and emotional aspects of what they need or want. And if we don't think about that, our designs aren't going to work. Even those of us who think we don't need or we're not emotional, we don't care about others, we do. We are intrinsically motivated by our relationships and connections to other, by our emotional drivers. So as we design for other people, we don't want to lose sight, and as we design for ourselves, of what we need socially and emotionally. So again, go back to the first page of notes and filter over all of the jobs you think this person wants to get done in their life over the next 4 months, right? Put those there and then filter them over to the next category. And this is your design criteria. What is the criteria around which innovation should be designed? What is it this person really needs? It doesn't need to be 7. There could be 5 criteria, there could be 10. But this is the part we often skip over. And then again, our innovations aren't meeting the other person's criteria or even our own. So a quick example here would be the current food system. We have the current food system we do because our criteria or its design came right out of World War I, World War II, and the Great Depression. With all of that going on, our government was like, okay, you know what we need? We need lots of food and we need lots of cheap food. They put a lot of policies in place that pushed out small family farms, that encouraged pesticides and fertilizers, that encouraged lots and lots of cheap food. And that's what's led to today. Those are the health consequences we get. Those are the policies we have in place. Those are the losses of farms. That's the desertification of our land and everything else that's transpired is because of that design. And it's not that the criteria was entirely wrong, but it's that it was limited, right? What if we had designed and we had included that we wanted to preserve health, that we wanted to preserve the land, or that we wanted to ensure small family farms weren't lost, right? If we had more holistically designed a system, we would have a different one in place today. There are long-term consequences to the solutions we design as humans that have massive impact. This is the step we keep leaping over. So what are your design criteria? This is just for you for your summer, but it could be for every and anything you design. You're going to take this design criteria into prototyping, into the next page. And again, prototyping is finding low stakes, low risk ways of testing out our ideas, our solutions before we transform an entire system and cause massive suffering as a government or as a business. How could we test this out? Or for ourselves, right? So in this case, how could we test out, how could we sketch out possible innovations, possible summers for our partner? And you see here on the next page, you have 5 drawings I want you to do. And this is not about being an artist. So please do draw. Sketch, circles, stick figures, squares, all of it matters. Studies show we're very visual learners. So I want to encourage you to visualize and not worry about it looking pretty, right? And the first thing I want you to visualize, the first possible summer, next 4 months for this person, take that design criteria, pull as many of them together as you can, and draw out the first obvious innovation or solution that comes to your mind. And we want you to start with the obvious because almost always our brain leaps into a solution. So don't step over that. But next, think about a crazy possible summer, or a fun, or an expensive, or an inexpensive. What about a bare bones, where we're really just locked inside? What about a dangerous summer, or a science fiction summer, or whatever else? If these prompts do not work for you, create ones that do. The prompt, the word there, is just intended to spark another possibility. Force the brain to try to think beyond the obvious. So the goal is just to get at least 5 ideas instead of just assuming one idea is going to fit perfectly. You get 5 minutes for 5 sketches. Again, if these are prototypes, the point is to rapidly iterate, to find lots and lots of ideas quickly and not to harp on whether they're good or bad, but just to imagine. Once you've got 5 sketches, we want you to turn back to your partner and give yourselves each 2 to 3 minutes to explain your 5 ideas and get their feedback. Partners, you must give clear, directive, specific feedback on what you like and do not like. If you're not honest, you're not going to get innovations and designs that really meet your needs. So this is about being very, very honest. So again, I would say 5 minutes for your sketches each, and then come back together and spend about 5 to 10 minutes talking those sketches through and giving each other feedback on what you like and don't like. Once you've done that, return back to this video, hit play, and iterate. Take that feedback and draw 2 more possible summers. And this time you could weave in, you could draw 2 new ones. You could also pull together some of your best ideas and the feedback you received to create an amalgamation, right? A hybrid version of what you originally designed that better meets all of those needs. And then again, you go back to the drawing board and you get feedback, 2 to 3 minutes, and you're going to, after that, draw the ultimate summer experience for your partner on that back last page. Draw it big, draw it beautiful, take your time here. At least 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, break out those crayons, break out the colored pencils or the markers, and imagine their best summer yet. Put it up on your wall, live into it. Again, studies show we rarely cultivate the life we want or the solutions we want because we give up or give in. One of the ways to counteract that is to visualize and put it right in front of your face every day, to talk about it, to move towards it, to prototype, to live into it, So once you've got this vision that is likely to meet a lot of your partner's needs, share it with them, mail it to them if you're not together, and hold each other accountable to it. Check in with each other, care for each other, and living out the life that we can under the very real constraints of the current reality. And know that you can use this process on anything, from designing your life or your schedule, to designing a new way of being, to designing a product, or how you want to work together as a team or a family. Place those visions in front of yourselves. Last thing I'm really going to ask you to do here is pull out your phone and scan that QR code. I need your feedback, especially in the current circumstances. As a center, we have a physical space that I would love to see you in the future, above Pandora's Pies. We can also operate online. We can operate asynchronously, and I can bring workshops and tools to you that might help meet your needs for your coursework, for your life, or whatever you're going through. If you scan that QR code, it's going to take you 60 seconds to say, I just completed the Design Thinking 101 workshop. Facilitator was Danielle Lake. Here's my feedback. This worked, this didn't. Here's what I need. I need these kinds of workshops, or I want these tools. And I have a team of Design Thinking Catalysts. I have a team of students and myself. We can continue to build workshops, platforms, and tools that will meet your needs from afar. And I would really like to do that. Please take those 60 seconds to give us that feedback so that we can continue to design opportunities that meet you where you're at. I'd also say that we have a team of Design Thinking Catalysts. That's something you could get involved in the future if you want. It's an internship at Grand Valley. We're going to be offering a Design Thinking 101 or an introductory course. If you're interested in that in the future, maybe an IDS 2 credit course. We also have student organizations, one called Design for America. If you want to use this process on community-based issues, really great opportunity for graduate schools and for future employment. And again, we have a space, we have consultations. We can work with you one-on-one, whether you want to work on a project, deepen your team-based skills, work on class stuff, or just do work for yourself, for your own personal, professional life. We're here to help. Just reach out at elonbydesign@elon.edu. Thank you very much.